How's everyone doing today? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, special edition style. Today, my special guest is Guy, the lead vocalist of the Red Chord, the amazing, legendary metalcore, hardcore band from Massachusetts. Lot to talk about. They got a bunch of fests lined up. They're repressing the original LP, which is super exciting. Just can't wait to talk to Guy. We'll get into all of that. Some old school metal hardcore stuff from New England and everything else in between that. Thank you. I'll grab you right now, Guy. Hold on one sec. Guy, what's
What's going on, man?
what's going on?
Hey, what's happening?
Not much. Let me get myself so I'm not cut off so much. Here we go. All right. I just want to thank you again for taking the time out to do this. It's a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. I've been a Red Chord fan for a long, long time, especially like me. You know, I'm kind of an old head. The original stuff is like my favorite stuff of all time, and hearing the repress news and stuff like that is just like super exciting for me. So
Well,
just thank you again for taking time out.
oh no, thanks for having me. And I've been a fan of your page. I've been watching I love all like the I guess the hardcore catalog early shows and stuff. So I've been like watching all the pictures and videos and stuff that you've been posting. I appreciate you doing it because it's difficult to find some of those early show videos.
Yeah, it's strange that like I always say this when I talk to people, like you see a bunch of people with camcorders back in the day, but you never really get to see like because a lot of the shows I taped, I saw other people filming, but I never see those shows like show up on YouTube or whatever, and it's probably like just lost on an 8 millimeter tape in like somebody's garage, their parents' garage or something like that, which
Yeah.
sucks, but
Yep.
yeah, I wish more people kind of just dug in the crates and got some more of that old stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, I want first off, like when I always do these talks, I always ask. This is kind of like a two, three-part question, but when you were younger as a kid, what what kind of music were you into first and foremost, and then what got you into like the heavier stuff as you got older?
So I the first music that I got excited about probably around like middle school age was definitely like in the early 90s like grunge stuff.
Hmm.
Um and it was like I remember one of my friends introduced me to like Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and stuff. And I always kind of liked the like more the louder side of that.
Hmm.
And right around the time that like Rage Against the Machine like started, it was I started being like intrigued, not so much with the band as much as like that they had something different to say.
Yeah.
And the escalation kind of like went fast because in like a very short period of time, like the first actual like CD that I had ever bought, just the transition from tapes to CDs was Anthrax Sound of White Noise.
Oh, nice.
And then very shortly after, I ended up with Far Beyond Driven from Pantera, Napalm Death, Scum, and as soon as like there was just something that when I just turned that corner and was just like, whoa, wait a second, like
Yeah.
um, it just went downhill, went uphill, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Where I just very quickly like graduated to like the most extreme stuff that I could find. So it was like a very short window between when I was listening to grunge and then all of a sudden I was like into into hardcore and into Suffocation and other death metal bands and just grabbing everything and anything, especially local wise. Um, when I started realizing that there was like a scene of stuff that was like, oh, it's not MTV. It's like just stuff that you could see at the Rat or the Middle East or something. Like it was
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Exactly. we were very lucky back in the day with all the shows that happened in Massachusetts and even in New Hampshire in the late like mid to late '90s. New Hampshire was really popping back then. I mean, it's dead now, but it was like, uh, you know, Rochester, for instance, was Safe and Sound, and the VFW where you played with Creation and A Life Once Lost, and
Yeah.
I think Ironac played
Yeah.
that show, and in the Enclitic I think played that show as well, which was like a great show, amazing show. But yeah, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. I mean, there was a show every single weekend, like forever, and then it kind of it fizzled out for a little while.
Yeah, so for a while, I mean, we like I'm from the North Shore of Mass. Like, I grew up in Revere, and there was a lot of shows that were in Lynn and just up in Salem and Gloucester, and especially like when you started getting out to like the Wakefield, Woburn, like there was a whole different like Animal Burlington, like where bands like Humans Being
Yeah. Oh,
and yeah, like point oh four humans being like they used to just play everything, and what was like neat was like when some of those bands like started kind of bringing in the more nationals, like Piecemeal started playing a lot,
yeah.
and I remember like it was a big deal. They brought like Brothers Keeper and Disembodied, or there was some like humans being point oh four show where they brought like Mushmouth. And I used to love that because it
Yeah.
was just like it was like they would just get their like you would go out and buy a cassette demo of the band that you knew that you're going to see just because you knew it would be more fun if you could memorize all the words and pile on
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was like that was like what I was like living for right through my teens.
Now, was your first love though like the death metal stuff, and then you kind of like got into the hardcore? Because Piecemeal, I mean, they do have metal influences, but it's more of like a like Mushmouth is more of a hardcore band. Like was your first love like death metal, and then kind of hardcore sifted its way into your liking?
So what was funny is in my teenage brain, I used to think that I mean I loved I remember I saw Blood for Blood and like Reason Enough and Polyglot and bands like that,
Yeah.
and the shows are crazy, and like the Rat used to do those Sunday matinee shows where like it'd be a punk show in the morning, and I wasn't really crazy about punk,
Yeah.
but I liked it when they would do like Rotten or Code 13, like one of those like crusty
Yeah.
bands. Then they would have the hardcore show in the afternoon, and then they'd have like a death metal show at night. And it used to be like, oh, you pay $10 and you could just go to like all three shows, just stick around all day. And in my head, I always thought that the hardcore guys just hadn't like found out about the death metal vocal style.
Yeah.
So at some point they were just gonna like realize that like, oh, okay, like and I didn't realize that there was such like a separation because I just loved all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you start realizing like, oh no, I hate that metal stuff. Oh, I hate that long hair. And I was just like, oh no, like what's the difference, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I was definitely more. I definitely stylistically liked metal more
Mhm.
as far as like sitting down and like listening to an album, but I like the energy of the hardcore show because it was just a different beast. Like in Kevin Rampelberg from Red Chord and I like we used to like just we worshiped Buried Alive. We worshiped like
Mm.
All Out War, and it was just the energy of the shows was totally different than it was a little off-putting, like sometimes when you go see some of the metal bands and like they were like very much like standing still.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like so it was like when we finally started, it was like, well, if we could put the technicality of what the metal guys are doing with the energy of what the hardcore guys are doing, and it's just funny to think that that was like somewhat of a novel concept at that day and
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
where it's like, no,
Well,
no, we'll just do it all,
yeah. Yeah.
you
That's
know?
true. And like in Red Court started what in 1999?
Yeah, about around then, yeah.
At that time there was like the red chord and like there was like Dead Eyes Under, and I'm trying to think of bands that were like Creation is Crucifixion, like they had like a big metal style but had the hardcore feeling to it too. Employer Employee is another band that was like really really heavy.
Yeah.
Ludite Clone was like that. Burnt by the Sun was kind of doing the same type of thing.
Yeah, so it was kind of neat, like with a lot of those bands, because I was fans of them, but I also kind of like felt like we became peers, you know.
Mm,
So like some of those bands like Burnt by the Sun, big fan of Burnt by the Sun, and I remember like they were ahead in the respect that they had the EP out,
Mhm.
and we had just like recorded our
Yeah.
demo. And I just remember like going out to the one of the shows that they opened up at the Middle East upstairs and like passing off our demo tape, and to this day like I'm still friendly with Mike by the Sun,
Yeah.
and it's amazing that you have that sort of camaraderie years later, like where every now that everyone's adults and they have we all have our own things going, that you those relationships have like persevered like decades.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's so crazy, and attest to you guys that you guys are still going strong. Like, you have a bunch of fests coming up, and those two banger shows in Braintree, and
Yeah.
then I mean that's crazy. That literally my friends got tickets, and they were like, "Oh, you got to get tickets," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll I'll think about it," because I was at work, and then they're like, "Oh, it's sold out." I was like, within like 10
so
minutes.
part of that, well, I guess like part of that was like by design, in the respect that um, we wanted to for that show in particular, we wanted to capture the vibe of an old Red Chord
Yeah,
show, put it in an intimate environment, and I mean frankly, when we were like kicking around the idea of like who to get for a lineup like
yeah,
that, we wanted to figure out like other bands that would be like-minded, where obviously if capacity is an issue, then money is an issue. So it's like, well, how do we get bands that we would love, that are going to be on board with potentially traveling and doing this like special thing? And everyone was like really cool about it. Like Dead Guy is like one of my favorite bands of
crazy,
all time.
crazy.
And when I ever was like, hey, listen, Dead Guy, like, would you come up? Could we make this work?
Mm,
And it's the first show in the New England area since like the late 90s.
yeah.
And like the fact that they said yes, and then when we were adding the second day, and when we realized, we were like, I think this is going to go really fast, like we'll add a second day, but we want to like shift up the dynamic and stuff,
Mhm.
to get through the Eyes of the Dead and From a Second Story Window, to so you really get like period specific of like when we were kind of like at like our high point in the mid 2005 2006. Like the fact that all those bands like that we'd been traveling with and friends with, whatever, were down to make this happen was like really special.
Yeah, I mean, the line when I saw the lineup, I was like on both days. I was like, Jesus! And on top of the fest that are coming up now, like Milwaukee Metal Fest is like insane lineup, and then what, you have the big Texas Metal Fest after that.
Yeah. So the first show that we're going to be playing this year will be the Milwaukee Metal Fest in the middle of the month. Which like the day that we're playing, I couldn't be like, I could not be happier.
Mm.
It literally looks like a show that we would have played in 2003 with
Yeah, yeah,
Internal Bleeding and Skinless. Skinless is like one of those bands. Skinless and Dying Fetus isn't playing that, but like back in the day, Skinless and Dying Fetus were like those kind of like big brother bands to what we
yeah,
were doing.
yeah,
I feel like we were able to appeal to like the hardcore kids more so, at least at that period of time,
yeah.
mainly because we were a little bit younger, and I think we like looked more the part.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, like those were like, when people like give us like credit, oh yeah, you guys like started deathcore. It's like, well, no, these guys were going strong for years before that. And in my head, that's what I thought like deathcore was.
Yeah, yeah.
But like that Milwaukee lineup, the day that we're playing, especially the fact that the Mr. Bungle is like
The
icing the
headline.
cake.
Yeah,
Friggin' Death, like doing the reunion show. Like there's a lot of like really great stuff on that. And then that Big Texas Metal Fest is pretty exciting. Like where there's a lot of there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
yeah,
Also, Parish Reunion is definitely seems to be what people are most hyped about.
yeah, yeah. Now, was there any other shows booked for this year? Are you gonna still like? I would love to see like another couple shows, small and intimate, like that feeling. Maybe like, would you ever do like a Middle East type of thing or something?
So we're doing, as far as this year goes, we are doing the Metal Hardcore Fest.
Mm,
I don't know that I know that we've been talking for a long while about trying to do like a New Hampshire show,
yeah,
like which would probably just by design end up being, you know, like playing something more on the lines of that, like
yeah,
because the two like Manchester venues right now are like either Jewel or Angel City
Yeah.
Music Hall, um, or like was it Flight in Dover
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah,
does
yeah,
Flight Coffee?
yeah,
Like I mean,
yeah.
so it is possible that we might circle back to something like that. We are kicking around some stuff for later in the year, like further out in the Midwest.
Mhm.
So like nothing's announceable quite yet, but there's a couple spots that we really want to go. I know that we really would like to like in the course of we've been we don't necessarily know what we're gonna do next, but like in the course of this like fuse together throwback cycle, we would like to try to make it out to the West Coast. So if there's any the biggest hindrance has just been I wouldn't care if we played basement shows and things like
Yeah.
that. It's just more like everything requires our drummer coming all the way up from Virginia
Mhm.
and then potentially a flight just because it's we're just trying to get stuff done in like a 2 or 3 day span because of work and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Nice.
it's unfortunately just landed on like, oh, well, the only thing that really makes sense in a lot of these ways has been, doing these festivals and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, true, definitely. I want to kind of go back in the day. Now, I wanted to ask you, is the Red Chord your first band you were in, or was there other bands before the Red Chord began?
I had some shitty local band type of stuff that I did like in high school, like that would have played like our high school battle of the bands and
Yeah.
stuff. Never, no one ever really would have heard of it. The origins of Red Chord, the Red Chord's originally called
Mhm.
Ictus, Ictus, and we started playing some shows around Mass and New Hampshire and stuff, and um, that was most of that was like me and Kevin from Red Chord, and then at one point we started trying to get Mike J to join the drummer, and he hated the name so much that he was like, I won't join unless you change the name. So but Ictus actually played some shows
Yeah,
here and there, like at least with some of these like regional local bands,
yeah,
like we would have played with like a Dead Eyes Under or something like that, or
yeah, yeah. I think I've seen that name on a few flyers though, out in like Instagram and stuff like that. I've
sure, yeah. And at one point I went through my attic and I was like trying to clean some stuff out, and I tried to take a bunch of photos of like old flyers before just shredding stuff,
yeah, yeah,
and I sent them all over to there's a girl who does an Instagram page called New England Shows, this girl Heather, and I just sent them over there just to make sure that they actually like got up on the internet and got distributed. So
yeah,
any of these old show flyers I've just been kicking over there, so it's like at least like some sort of catalog. And I know that there was some Ictus shows. No, I think there was some like Backstabbers Incorporated shows and things like that
yeah, yeah.
in there somewhere.
Do you remember like Backstabber's first band? Those guys were in As I Bleed. Did you ever see As I Bleed
Yes, yeah,
or
I
Life?
loved As I Bleed.
Yeah, me too. I looked for that demo for like the longest time, and then finally one of the band members put it on YouTube, so it's like on YouTube now, so you can actually hear it.
Yeah.
And then a few of those guys did Life Passed On, which was an amazing band too back
Yeah, yeah.
then.
So when I met Mike J, he was playing guitar and Life Passed On, and I think that's probably more likely to be on the Ictus flyers, like Ictus and Life Passed On, and then I don't know, like they hated the name or something and moved it over. But I really liked As I Bleed. The Servants were in that, and I always thought Matt's voice was really cool, and just all of those New Hampshire bands were pretty prolific. The Fall, Tukla the Mock,
Yeah,
As I Bleed. Like I thought there was definitely something like really special going on, and there's some really awesome stuff. I just saw Timmy Tech from the network and Fault just like logged in a
yeah,
second ago.
yeah. Timmy's a good friend of mine. I've known those guys for a long time. I think I knew those guys when they were like 15 years old, I think, and
Yo, there he is.
Tim. Yeah, so I've known those guys for a long time. I was good friends with the Fall guys and the Ookla, the Mock guys. I did all the flyers for Ookla the Mock pretty much, and help them out with like some names of like like albums and I actually came up with the name Ukla the Mock. They were like thinking of names, and like I was just writing down names for them, and they were like, "Oh, what's this?" And like just because I was a dorky kid that watched like fucked up cartoons back in the day, and like had this obscure thing. But there's like three other bands named that, so I didn't know that at the time.
And Adam, the Psyopus singer, is in a new band called Sully. He just logged in the chat. So what's up, Adam? What's up, Sully? They're definitely cool.
Yeah, so I love those. I love those New Hampshire kids. Do you remember your first show that you played, like the real first show that you played?
I'm trying to think of which one. I guess some of it like kind of blends together. So no, bro, like not. I know we used to just play like just whatever. By the time we started like playing actual shows, we'd already like done a bunch of like these kind of like fake shows.
Yeah,
Um, one of my early bands, like we used to like play the Front Street Coffee House and Salem and the Northern Grind and Beverly, and we got like a lot of that sort of stuff out of our system where we would try to get these like we would try very hard to like get on like a Point au Four show
yeah,
or something like that, and then it really like it became more real like when we finally shifted over to Ictus and the Red Chord.
yeah, yeah. No, you. The first thing that came out by the Red Chord was that demo, like East Coast tour, CDR thing, right? Was that the first thing that came out that you guys kind
So
of?
we did a track on a compilation. There was a couple like little comps like where we just had these like one-off
Yeah,
songs, and we uploaded some stuff onto like hxcmp3.com and stuff. But
yeah,
yeah, the first actual thing that we pressed on to was the three song, and all three of those songs ended up on the actual the actual like full length. I think that so we had some Ictus songs from our demo that we ended up recording at one point with Mike J on drums,
hmm,
which many years later we did the reissue of Fused Together with like there was a track Better Judgment, Jar Full of Bunny Parts,
yeah, yeah,
so that was like the gray area between like when Ictus stopped and Red Chord began and but most of that stuff was out there in the course of most of that stuff was out there in the course of like the Robotic Empire reissue.
yeah. Now, how did Andy Lowe kind of reach out to you guys, or did you reach out to Andy Lowe? Like, how did that? How did Robotic Empire get into the fold with the Red Chord?
So yeah, that was it. So basically like the sequence of events was we we I didn't really have any intention of like touring, like actually like going out and pursuing it. Like I like the idea of going on a tour,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really something. Nick Heilman, Year of Our Lord Nick,
Oh,
just signed in. What's up, dude?
oh,
Uh, I, I like the idea of like doing stuff, but I had no intention of like actually like going out and doing it. And so where it really kind of shifted was Mike J was in a bunch of bands. So
mhm,
he was in Backstabbers. Um, he was in a band called Hassan Isaba in the Holy Hand Grenades.
yeah.
And essentially like what started with Mike had Hassan Isaba was doing the Robotic Empire thing and they were starting to get busy. And they booked a tour kind of prematurely. Like they were like, oh, there's all this hype around Hassan. We're gonna go out and we're gonna like go out for like 9 weeks and just drop everything and go. Well, lo and behold, Hassan Isaba like didn't. I don't even think that they made the first like shows before they just imploded.
Yeah.
So then Backstabbers Incorporated said, we're going to step up and it's our time. They're going to go. And then basically they imploded.
Hmm.
And the Hassan Isaba bass player was like, hey, like, let's like try to salvage this summer. And like, let me help you like build a tour out of like the stuff that fell
Hmm.
apart. And around that time, like Robotic had worked with Hassan Isaba and like he ended up introducing us to Andy Lowe, and we hit it off and like all met up, and there was some big brawl in Brighton, and next thing you know, like he's like, yeah, let's do a record together, and then like we like lined up the tour, and it was like, yeah, well, how are we gonna tour? We have like we don't even have a demo, and it was, we started like, all right, we'll tour before we even have the demo, and we'll just be ex-members of Hassan Sava and Backstabbers
Yeah.
Inc. and see what happens. So
I mean, it worked. It worked well,
I mean,
obviously.
we played. It was interesting because there was like there was a weird little like buzz about the band, and we started like playing around and stuff, but we didn't have really much in the way of like anything formal. It was just like word of mouth, like, oh yeah, I saw that
Yeah,
band, like I
yeah,
saw that band in Mass, and I'll talk about them on the Robotic Empire, message board.
yeah.
So,
What was this Brighton brawl that happened?
um, so yeah, if memory serves correctly, we went out to something like we went up to some. Well, it started at Kurt Ballew's house where Ryan was living with Ryan from Hassan Sabo that ended up touring with us was like living with Kurt, and then somehow we ended up at some weird house party, and like I think it was like crashing some house party, and Mike J had broken hands, clearly broken his hands. He was playing a Backstabbers Inc. show, got upset, threw his guitar, started punching the floor, and he had these big like monkey mitt hands. And we were about to play our first show with the red chord, like, and Mike,
Mm,
and he had broken hands. And then
yeah,
we ended up at this party, and something happened where somebody was like giving him dirty looks, and it turned into like he couldn't hit him, so he poured a beer on his head, and that turned into like Mike couldn't do anything because the hands were broken,
yeah,
and Andy Lowe was just like, what the hell's wrong with these guys? Like, yeah, well, all right, let's do a record, and yeah, it was just a mess. It was
yeah,
just a big old mess. We went out to go say hi to Andy, and it just turned into a debacle.
yeah,
And like none of us were even like really like drinkers or anything at the time.
yeah. So that tour was, like you said, you toured before the album even came
Yeah.
out. So,
So
so
we were just playing all these shows repeatedly on like a 3-song demo, and then we like re-recorded it so it sounded a little bit better, and and then pressed it to CDR, which and like put some little homemade insert into it.
yeah.
But yeah, that 2001 tour was like the first like tour, and we didn't have like a proper release at that point.
Now, do you still have those, like a demo still in your possession? You still have one of those?
Maybe somewhere. I don't think I have. I might have the CDR somewhere. I haven't been able to find it, but it's probably in the. It's not stored very responsibly. That's for sure. It's probably in a box, like in the shed somewhere.
Yeah. Well, once Fuse came out, I mean, I like everybody knew who the Red Chord was. I feel like, obviously, because like that album is um like you have the hardcore kids that, and then you have the metal kids that love that album, like especially the hardcore kids. I feel like I was kind of more of a hardcore kid back then. It's funny because I kind of went from like thrash metal to like deathy metal to straight up like New York hardcore stuff to, then it was like that hardcore stuff was doing influence influencing like metal, like Agnostic Front was doing, all of a sudden they were getting metal-y guitars in their albums, and
Yeah.
things started to progress. And so like that's why I love everything. Not like you were saying, not everybody loves, like you were saying about those hair bags, like, hardcore kids don't like hair bags and blah blah blah. That was the case when I was real young going to the channel. um those bands never kind of like, I saw like they weren't Nazi skinheads, but they were skinheads, and they hated bands like Typo Negative, and they hated like, any for instance, like Cannibal Corpse. I saw Cannibal Corpse, and there was like skinheads spitting on them and stuff back in the day in Boston. So it was like a very weird thing
Yeah,
when I
there
was
was
very,
definitely like a lot of like division when it came to that stuff. I remember there was like AC and Napalm Death or something were playing some show at the Rat, and it was like intersecting with like one of those like punk shows. And I just remember there being like just I was like young, I was probably like 15 or 16, I just remember these dudes just like fighting, and it was just for no real reason. Just like one guy has short hair and the other guy has long hair, and they're gonna like be throwing, drinking and throwing bottles at each other like out front of
Yeah,
in Kenmore Square.
yeah, yeah.
Like
It
kind
was
of.
it was crazy back then, and I just remember, um, but me going back into time, that's why I like everything. I love metal, I love hardcore, I love, I hate genre names like screamo or like emo violence or like anything like that. It's just like I love everything heavy.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. No, I totally agree. And in my head, I remember thinking that I just enjoyed it all. So yeah, I loved like Nine Inch Nails and the weird industrial. It wasn't what I wanted to go see like in
Mm.
like a weekly, a weekly basis. I like one of the like tipping points for me was that really got me super excited about a lot of that was like I started seeing like Cave In and Converge and it was just like wow, like that, and that was just in our backyard,
Yeah, yeah,
like just completely. And but a lot of those shows, like there'd be a band like 10 Yard Fight playing, and it was just like how did you go from like screamy, metalcore band to posy hardcore band,
yeah,
and it was just
yeah,
seamless,
yeah.
and
It
there
worked
was like way
perfectly.
more acceptance. I guess there was way more acceptance as long as people, you know, looked and dressed similar.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
they weren't ready for like the spiked jean jackets and
yeah,
stuff in that world. But yeah, I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. Now going back to Fuse after that came out, what like how did Metal Blade get into uh you know how did they get in contact with you to kind of be like, hey, we want to sign you guys, like we want to put clients out, like how did that happen after it had been what 3 years after Fused it came out?
Yeah, so we started talking to Metal Blade kind of earlier on, like throughout probably '03, '04. So when I was in college, I was working at the like our little pretend campus radio station, and I used to like reach out to a lot of the record labels, and I got to be friendly with a lot of like the music directors.
Hmm.
So eh, I I guess like they were probably used to hearing people that were like, "I'm in a band, let me send
Yeah,
you
yeah,
stuff,"
yeah.
and I'm for the most part like it was like not a cold call because you knew the person, so you knew that they'd listen to
Hmm.
it, and I think that they were expecting to like politely kind of like let me down, and when I actually sent them like Fused,
Hmm.
people started returning the calls and being like, "Whoa, wait a second! Like, maybe we could have you talk to like our A&R person." And it was interesting because like suddenly we had it was more so in the very beginning we couldn't get people to like really care.
Hmm.
Like as far as like we were like the Robotic Empire days, it was very difficult,
Hmm.
but then after we started actually like touring and playing or whatever, then it was like everyone's kind of coming in and being like, "Hey, and we started having conversations I wouldn't have expected to ever have in that position.
Yeah.
Um, Metal Blade, the one of the music directors like that I worked with through the college, like she was like our biggest advocate over there, and I thought frankly I thought we were going to sign with another label at that point, and Metal Blade like kind of came on strong later, and we kept in touch with them we were back and forth with them for probably a year before we actually ended up
Yeah.
signing. And no, it ended up feeling right. It was all said and done.
I mean, weren't you touring like crazy before clients came out though? I mean, you guys were on like a tear, weren't you? Like in those year or two before that had come out? Because I remember
Yeah,
like
we
a
were
million shows.
yeah we were playing very consistently through like
Mhm.
2003, and then we kind of hit a snag with the like when we lost our drummer and our bass player at the same time,
Mhm.
and like that really like slowed us down because it was probably at the end of '03 we started like being like, I think we're going to sign a Metal Blade. Things are looking up. Like we were feeling pretty good about moving, and then like the band kind of imploded.
Yeah.
And we tried for a little while. We had a couple different guys playing with us, but it really slowed down because at that point we were like go 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 go
Yeah.
go, and then it was like not just write, it was like write and recruit and retrain, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that was probably the toughest era of the band, just trying to like figure out the future at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Clients was like, I don't know if I'm correct on this, but that was your biggest selling record, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
And were you expecting like such a, you know, people to love that album so much, and like it kind of blew up like when it came out?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was exciting. Like, I feel like we got to do more, and we went a lot further with the band that I had ever really imagined it.
Hmm.
Especially because like when you come from like the basement VFW hall scene, you're like, I want to play in a band. I want to play a show. I hope that somebody's gonna bob their head or mosh to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like, maybe we'll go on tour.
Hmm.
And then it was like, all right, maybe we'll go on like the tour that we want to go on. And
Yeah.
like the fact that like like on Clients, it was like, hey, we're recording this Ant-Man video, and it's on MTV2, and it's like most requested on Headbangers Ball, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
what just happened? Like, um, so it was especially like I guess the bigger thing is that sounding the way that we sounded and getting that,
Mm.
because like there wasn't, I mean, there were bands that were there were bands that I think were a little bit more accessible. I will say that like Metal Blade was doing very well with As I Lay Dying and Black Dahlia Murder at that point.
Yeah.
So I mean, Black Dahlia Murder definitely like was a pretty uncompromising, like they were presenting this like blast beat at the gates type sound.
Yeah.
So the fact that like that was catching on, it was an interesting turning point. But like it was definitely a different band, and yeah, I didn't expect to make it to a lot of the places that we got to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, and Pray for Our Eyes is like, that's like, for me, that's my second favorite album. That album, it's kind of, it's cool that the Red Chord like has different stages sounding wise. I mean, it's all kind of the same sound, but it's like, it, I don't know. It feels like there's a you know what I mean? It's not a different band, but it feels different every album that you guys have put out. And like I said, the first one obviously is my favorite. And I think it's great that you guys never kind of did like the singing thing, which like
Yeah.
is never like the cool thing for me to listen to. Like I'll listen to a band that's super heavy, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking sick. And then all of a sudden, this like silly singing starts blasting out. And that's not for me. I mean, it could be for some other people. That's fine, but it's just not my
Well,
taste.
you take a band like Gojira or something like that, and I feel like it naturally went there. It naturally went there where they started out almost in this like weird, Fear Factory heavy type, but like were primarily brutal vocals. And then at some point it like diverted and it became like this weirdo prog project.
Mm.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
It was more when bands would like say, okay, you know what, this is the time that we're gonna throw in the melody and it's gonna be the single, like where it sounded more like forced.
yeah,
It's like, all right, we gotta do this because we're gonna, but we're gonna essentially sell
mm.
out. Now, part of it is I can't really sing. I've gone incredibly far in my life musically for a guy that's not a musician. I can't play any instruments. I can't do karaoke.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm a one-trick pony, so if they wanted to do that, they would have had to get somebody else. But at the same time, like we also were happy to not do that because we liked, uncompromising
yeah.
death metal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keeping it brutal is like it's awesome. Did anybody try to influence you to that point? Like they were like, "Hey, you want to,
No,
try singing? You might get, X amount of, buys or whatever, or downloads or whatever."
no, metal. I will say, Metal Blade was incredibly supportive and had always presented it as though like whatever it is that you guys want to do. They always seemed happy with what it was that we were delivering to them. Like when we were sending them demos, they made suggestions on like, hey, would you want to try this studio or that studio? But if we were like, yo, we want to do this,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
and I mean that's a testament to the fact that I think Slagle and the Mike Faley was our A&R guy over there. Like they've been in the game for a long time, and they've worked with a little of
Yeah.
everything. And I think that they understood that like getting into our band, like they were getting into our world,
Mhm.
and they liked what we had going on, and they were okay with that. They weren't trying to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna like create like the next. They weren't looking for like Seven Dust or something
Yeah.
like that out of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the set list coming up, is it going to be primarily just Fuse stuff? I mean, is that what kind of, because
Um,
which one, like, it's the repress is coming out, and like, is that,
So Milwaukee, I doubt it. Milwaukee, I think we're was gonna. I mean, we're playing for a pretty short period of time, so it's like like I think it's just gonna be 30 minutes of just like the bangers,
yeah,
whatever it is that people would really want to hear. I mean, if you're on and you're going to Milwaukee, let us know. Like we still have time to morph a set list. Um, for the Braintree shows, that'll be like I would guess that we're gonna probably play, most or everything off of Fuse both nights,
yeah.
and then just throw in whatever else from there.
Now, doing the vocals of like the first album, I mean, your vocals were kind of a little more hardcore and less death. Is it kind of like going back to some of the songs that you didn't play, like tricky now for you, like vocally wise, or is it just kind of like riding a bike?
No, what was funny when we did Fuse